Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Wilbur Talks FPL, back for episode 15, where we talk everything FPL and the Premier League in general. We are back after a 2-week break. Again, a lot of fixtures going on, a lot of chaos over the 3-game weeks that have passed since we last podded, so there's a lot to talk about, a lot of madness, a lot of confusion, a lot of late rescheduling of games, and still a festive period potentially to get through, so there's a lot of chaos going on at the minute. But we are joined by the regulars, Sam and Charlie. How are you both doing?
All good here, thank you.
Yep, not too bad.
Good stuff. I think we'll jump into it. A bit of a different pod, shall we say, because we've got so much to talk about, so much crazy stuff going on the last few weeks. But to start with, I think we just got to talk about the obviously COVID situation and everything that's been going on in the games and the utter madness that we've seen the last few game weeks. And I think we'll go to Charlie first. Just kind of a generalised comment here, Charlie, just how you've been finding tackling FPL in these kind of situations and your thoughts about the Premier League in general at this time, like all the late call-offs and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's been a very strange one. It feels even weirder than back from when it all broke out, and it felt like there weren't, not that I can really remember, I don't feel like there are as many postponements as there are now. And then there was obviously that hard stop, whereas this time it just does feel a bit more open, with, like you say, games being called off very late, which seems very harsh for, travelling fans, particularly getting called off very close to kick-off and things like that, which is a shame. FPL-wise, I think it just means you have to focus a lot more week to week because you just don't know what games are even going to be on. And I try to leave any moves as late as possible anyway. But I think this is all obviously making that much more necessary, with particularly like we saw at the weekend with deadline getting moved back. Well, it ended up moving back twice, I think, in the end, because of the first game originally scheduled and then the middle game getting called off as well. So yeah, lots to think about, but at the same time, I also am just trying to just stick with the kind of same way that I always play it. Obviously, you've got to make amendments for if games are going to be on or not, for obvious reasons, but just trying to, kind of just play pretty safe, I think. That's all you can really do. I don't think there's a lot of benefit at the moment to going too risky or too outside the box.
Yeah, it seems to be working pretty well, that strategy for you so far. We'll touch on how you've been doing just after we go over to Sam. How have you been finding having to deal with FPL with these situations, Sam?
I think it's Charlie summed up pretty well, but it can be very easy to lose interest if you have a bad game week purely out of things that are out of your control. For example, fixtures getting cancelled, or if you've only got 3 or 4 players playing in a game week and those around you in the league have more playing, then but you just got to try and stick with it and realise that it's probably not going to be like this for the rest of the season, or hopefully not for the whole season at least, and try and stick at it.
It's a very challenging time, and it's very. We've seen a lot of shaking up in our league, shall we say, and there's a certain front runner. So we're going to touch on how we've done in the last 3 game weeks since we've had the last pod. So I think it's quite right to start with Charlie, who can tell us about his great rise, and he seems to be doing even better through adversity. And we might have to change the pod into getting Charlie to number 1 at one point. Do you want to cover those last 3 weeks for us, Charlie?
Yeah, well, as you kind of alluding to, it's all gone pretty well for me. Look, I can't ignore how much a part luck has played in that. That first, I think it was 2 weeks ago when those first round of fixtures started getting postponed, or like some of the fixtures started getting postponed. I was completely fine from that. None of my players did. And then the week just gone, I think I only had 10 playing players, but a lot of people had a lot less than that. So, I can't ignore the fact that a lot of luck has come into what's happened. And also, I've been talking earlier in the season about how there are these 50-50 decisions you make that can either go well or go badly. And you can, as long as you're making them for the right decisions, then I think the right reasons, rather, I think it's fine. And earlier in the season, I think I particularly remember on my wildcard that first week, a lot of the choices that I felt I made for the right decisions didn't pay off. but now I've just kind of hit a good run of those 50-50 decisions coming off. I was actually looking, so in my last, I think 6 transfers, 5 of them have on their first week got at least 2 attacking returns, which is a crazy kind of run of transfers to be making, and to get that instant reward is pretty satisfying. But yeah, it's been a good rise. I think particularly not the week just gone, but the one before that was one where I think I got 88 points, and that was game week 17, and that was against an average of 45. So getting one of my highest scores of the season in a week when a lot of people didn't do so well, that really helped push me, because we've been talking a lot about trying to crack that top 10k, and that was the thing that finally got me to do it. So yeah, it was nice. That was a week I brought in Foden and Watkins as my 2 free transfers, who at the time were quite low owned, which allowed me to push on. So now the latest I'm up to is 2049th overall rank, so I'm pretty pleased with that. Second highest I've ever been. So yeah, basically just about trying to maintain it from now, I think.
Yeah, I think there's breaking into the top 10k and I'm just smashing right through it. Like, that's the way to do it, isn't it? To just rise up like that. Yeah, I was going to pick out the Watkins and the Foden that you had from that previous week, and then the Martinelli this week. Just the massive strokes on those the last 3 transfers that have gone well for you there. Yeah, it's a funny one. Go on.
I was going to say, I think my favourite thing about all 3 of those transfers as well is that all of them were games on the day of that deadline as well. So it kind of got the week off to the perfect start. So it kind of instantly settles you in for that week, knowing that you've got a good score already.
Yeah, and like you said, what's even more difficult in these scenarios, obviously it can be 50-50 choices between, like, you could have been between 2 City assets, or you could have been bringing Foden in the week after and he doesn't play. So it's just perfect timing, and they've all come together perfectly for you there. And I have to say, I gave you a bit of a boost. I think, where were you? I think it was about 4 or 5k midway through the game week, and I was like, we just need a Mount goal here. And then literally Mount scored within about 30 seconds of that happening. Just give you a slight boost. That helped me at the same time, but yeah, you're doing fantastically well so far. So, like we said, we might have to be abandoning our chances of getting to number 1 and helping you, but you can see at the minute your transfer decisions are on point, so I definitely need to be listening to you on those ones. So if we move over to Sam, how have you got on the last 3 weeks or so?
Yeah, pretty. Really, I mean, not terribly. It's just been an outstanding 3 weeks from Charlie, really. But going back to like game week 16, only just below average. Game week 17, above average. Game week 18, well above average. Like he said, some of the decisions just fell the wrong side of the coin. I brought Walker in for the double City defence, and he hasn't been in a squad since. I bought in Bowen and Antonio for a points hit. Neither at West Ham haven't played a game since. I bought Bernardo in over Foden. I was flipping the 2. Bernardo hasn't made an attacking return since I bought him in. It's just been one of those really that's just gone the wrong way. I was literally sat with finger over Martinelli this weekend. That one didn't end up happening. I just thought I'd just stick with Rafinha and try and roll a transfer. Obviously, would have probably have gained a little bit with going Martinelli, but it is what it is. So yeah, it's been unfortunate, but it's it is what it is, really.
Yeah, I think we've both got similar stories, haven't we? I think even just I'm slightly annoyed at mine as well, because literally, so the first game week of the 3, we actually discussed it on the previous pod that I was wildcarding in. I think we're on. It would have been 16, wouldn't it? Yeah. So I wildcarded in 16, brought this treble Man United in. It worked perfectly for the first week. Got a nice little rank increase, probably to the highest point I'd been this season. Yeah, to about 220 k, coming back from that 1.1 million. So I was like, I'm nicely set up. Ronaldo getting a goal, De Gea getting a clean sheet, and then literally the next game gets cancelled. I'm like, fantastic. That's kind of a nightmare scenario when you just wildcarded, when you like your 3 kind of differential, well, slightly differential at least. Just sat there on the bench all with 0 points. So it was really that game week 17 that destroyed my rank. Really, I think how many players I've got there? I had 7 players playing in that game, which is a bit of a nightmare. Luckily, I kind of limited the damage somewhat, but I lost about 50k in rank. I don't know if you guys saw my in game week 18. I'm not sure if we had a pod, I would have done this strategy. I actually free hit in 18 because I was taking a kind of a risk there, because if I was going into 18, I had about 5 players who were doing playing, and I was like, if I transfer some players out here, I'm going to be taking the United assets out, and I want the United assets coming up. So I was like, the way to keep the United assets and still do good in that week will be to free hit and get a full team out. So it's probably not the best way to use the free hit, but to try and keep some benefit from that wild card. I free hit in game week 18 and got 62 points, so it was decent. Basically got me back to where I was before, so it could have been better, but I'm quite happy with how it sits. Obviously, I've just not got a free hit to use later in the season, but the fact that I've used that wild card quite close to the middle of the season, I'm hoping I can play that other wild card later on. So unfortunately, that's a chip down for me, guys. When it comes to strategies later on in the season, you two have got that up on me. So, but I think you guys, I think you both would have talked me out of it if we had a pod. But I think, well, and just to add context to that as well, I had made 3 transfers before the Villa game got called off. So I was going to be taking a -8. And I was like, screw it, we'll just free hit this. Because I lost 2 players from that. I was like, yeah, this ain't going to go well. So I don't know what you guys think about that one.
Yeah, I don't actually mind that, particularly in the position you were in, and with the reasoning you gave about, long term.
Yeah.
I'd still question Man United assets, but the fixtures certainly are still there, and you've talked about potential double game weeks as well, which the potential for Man United might be good as well. So I think there's sufficient logic there to say that it wasn't a bad move necessarily, and presumably by the point score you got compared to however many players you said you had left or would have had in your normal team plus the minus as well.
Yeah.
It probably worked out sufficiently well that you probably got a points return extra, something similar to what you would do if you play the free hit later in the season anyway. So yeah, I don't necessarily mind it at all, and yeah, it's a move to try and capitalise or differentiate yourself from people around you. So I don't mind it.
Yeah, I think I got about 20 points more, and then the -8 as well. So I think that at least 25 points kind of swing. It could have been a lot. Obviously, 25 points the other way, it looked pretty bad. So could have been a lot worse, and just fingers crossed United actually get the games in. Otherwise, I'm just in the mud still completely.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. If they don't play like the next game, then it starts to look a bad decision. But you can't really know that in advance, so it's difficult.
Yeah, because I would have literally been doing like a short-term moves to get rid of Ronaldo and bringing in like Lacazette, and I'm like, do I really want that long-term? It's probably like a 2-game week move, and then I want Ronaldo back anyway. So it's just kind of see how it goes. It was kind of forced on strategy that it obviously only came about because of the circumstances, but we'll see how it works. Hopefully the United games are on, and there's a potential they could get 2 double game weeks in quick succession and could get me those points back, but we'll touch on that as we go forward. So if we touch on the most recent game week, we actually only had 4 fixtures, which is not ideal to talk about. We'll talk about a few of the other clubs and the COVID situations as well. So we'll give you the glory while you can, Charlie. So obviously you got the double for Martinelli and Arsenal. Nice convincing win. Obviously a very depleted Leeds team at the same time, but I'm sure you was very happy with that result. Any thoughts about that match in general?
Yeah, like you say, it was. I think going in, I had the feeling we should win that fairly comfortably, as you say, because Leeds are so depleted. They've looked so bad recently. Conceded 7 to Man City. We're obviously by no means Man City, but certainly felt like we should do well against them. And then they conceded 3 to Chelsea the week before as well, I think. So yeah, felt pretty confident. That's why my main kind of move to make this in FPL was to get an Arsenal attacker somehow. And yeah, just pretty good. I don't want to go sort of too out there because with that caveat of the fact that Leeds were so poor. But it was just nice to see some good sort of interplay between the front players. It does feel like we've got a pretty good system locked in, and particularly this rise of Martinelli lately. I've said off the pod, I think certainly if you take Alba out of the equation, and obviously his form currently anyway wouldn't put him there, but I think I fancy Martinelli to be the best finisher in our squad by quite some way. Obviously you can make the argument Aubameyang, if he was on form, could maybe rival that, but I don't fancy any of the other players to finish a one-on-one more than I would Martinelli. So I think he is that kind of killer instinct player that we're lacking with the out of form Aubameyang. So that just kind of not completes the puzzle, because we're a long way off that, but just kind of adds that extra thing that we're really lacking. And then we've still got this kind of competition for places now in terms of only 3 of Martinelli, Odegaard, Smith Rowe, Saka can start. Obviously, Saka's pretty much going to start every game, I would expect. So it's now sort of rotation between Smith Rowe and Odegaard, which is pretty good. It's kind of what we wanted. That's, I think, why Odegaard was brought in the first place. So it's really good to see. A bit disappointing to lose a clean sheet with a pretty stupid tackle from Ben White. But again, it's just one of those things I think you chalk up to being a bit inexperienced, and it's a very young defence. It's a very new defence. I think it's something with experience should get a lot better. And it was just fortunate that didn't come at a point where it would have really affected the game. So, yeah, overall very pleased. It's on a run of a couple of good fixtures or a couple of good results. So yeah, just kind of want to keep going along like that. We've got Norwich next, which again should be a game that we should be looking to win fairly comfortably. And then after that is a couple of more tough games. I think we've got City coming up, and then the North London derby as well. So again, it's those kind of games where it's a real test, and to see what particularly the Spurs game, because they can be someone that we're fighting with for top 4. So overall pleased, and just kind of looking forward to more games going forward, really.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask you a question about those 3 positions behind the strikers, behind the one striker, should I say? So, not including obviously how Martinelli's done in the last week. If you're looking forward to the next 5 game weeks, say, would you still be, if you didn't have an Arsenal attacker, would you be bringing in Martinelli, or would you be going for a Saka because he's more nailed?
It's really tough. I think. Yeah, I don't really know, to be honest. And that was kind of what I was thinking when I was trying to decide on my transfer, and ultimately I just went for Martinelli for a couple of factors, based on Aubameyang kind of being confirmed effectively not going to be playing again until at least after AFCON. By the sounds of it, he's been kept out of the main training and all that sort of thing for disciplinary reasons. I think Saka's the most nailed for sure. But I feel like Arteta has really implemented a kind of, if you play well, you stay in the team element. I think that's why we haven't seen Smith Rowe come back in. He was out for 1 week with an injury and then was basically on the bench, and he's come off the bench and scored. So there's nothing wrong with what he's doing. But also Odegaard's been playing well in the meantime in his place. And it's been enough to keep Smith Rowe out of the team. So I think whilst players are still playing well, which Martinelli is, I think he still starts. And again, that's kind of be evidence from the cup game tonight. Martinelli's on the bench, so I feel fairly confident going into Norwich that he should be starting that game, and I would expect him probably to score in that game. So yeah, I think I've not really decided there. I think I would go, if you want to play safe, I would go Saka. If you want to go a little bit more risky, but with a better threat at goal, and also the other thing that I was thinking about was his price, because Martinelli's he's now 5.3. He was 5.2 when I brought him in. That's enough for me to. I'm happy to either bench him, or if he doesn't start, that's fine. He can just stay on the bench for that price. So I think it just kind of comes down to your play style. If you want to go more safe, I would still go Saka. If you want to go a bit more risky, then go Martinelli.
Yeah, you definitely got him at the right time, especially at that price as well. Like you said, it seems to be working for you that first week when you get them in. I've just seen that Arsenal have also just conceded against Sunderland as well. So you
we don't need to talk
you
about
you just like to let a goal in, don't you? Wherever it is. I'm pretty sure Ben White was playing again, so we'll blame him again. Yeah, don't start me on that. When I put double Arsenal defence on my free-hit team, and then Ben White does a stupid thing like that, it's exactly what I was expecting, really. Yeah, but that's good. One to look out for, I think, especially. See, you mentioned that I've got Norwich coming up. I think a few people will be looking at Martinelli, and the others as potential, at least short term, for that. So yeah, it's an interesting debate between, especially those two that we talked about. And yeah, Lacazette was quite frustrating as well. He was literally just trying to avoid points wherever he could in that last game.
Yeah, I do feel like he kind of falls more into the Firmino type of striker than
Yeah.
an out and out number 9. And I thought that for quite a while. It's been that way for quite a while since Aubameyang pretty much came in. Lacazette was much more not necessarily the one on the end of chances. And he does a lot of running and does a lot of trying to link up play and play in players. But yeah, he just never seems to be the out and out striker. And also, I'm never confident in his finishing. It always just seems to be a scuff, like off the shin or off the knee or off the thigh or something, or he just like hits it into another player and then it goes in. So yeah, that's why I still prefer any of the midfielders really over Lacazette, but also particularly Martinelli because I fancy him to finish chances, whereas the rest I feel like would need a couple of chances before they can score.
Probably why I didn't want to be putting that Lacazette in for the long term. And like, it seems just wrong to take Ronaldo out for Lacazette for the long term. But anyhow, that was a 1 week hit. He's not coming back for now. Right, so we touch on probably the most exciting game as well from the past game week, which involves Sam's team. I feel like we say this at least every other pod that Liverpool are involved in the most exciting game. So what were your conclusions from the Spurs Liverpool game, Sam? A really enjoyable game, and so what did you think of Liverpool? What did you think of Spurs?
This was a crazy game of football, to be honest. It was probably enjoyable from the neutral's perspective, not so enjoyable from a Liverpool fan's perspective. Like, and it's weird because the games that have been high scoring draws earlier in the season, like against City and even the Brentford game, you can look back at those and think, yeah, that was a really entertaining game of football. And I really enjoyed watching that, even though we didn't quite get all 3 points. But this was, this was a tough one to take, to be perfectly honest. After the events, how they unfolded, the officiating in the Premier League once again being highlighted as needing review. I thought Liverpool absolutely dominated Spurs for the first half. But Spurs were threatening on the counter attack, but Liverpool for a majority of the first half had the game under control. Spurs were probably the better team in the second half, especially after Robertson got sent off. There didn't really appear to be too much way back into the game for Liverpool at that point. So yeah, I think maybe a draw was. It's hard. It's so hard to say because if the first incident is officiated properly, then the whole plan of the game unfolds in a different manner. But you like we said off air at the start, you can only beat what's in front of you. And whether that's a 10-man Spurs or an 11-man Spurs or a 10-man Liverpool, it was a strange game. It's a really good finish from Harry Kane for the first goal for Spurs. He probably should have had one before that as well. It was a really good block from Konate. And then, how on earth Harry Kane is still on the pitch is quite incredible. After the first few minutes, it just went on from there. And when Liverpool went 2-1 up, I think most people, including myself, thought, "Oh, we've seen this script before. Like Liverpool aren't going to lose it from here." And it's quite unfortunate for Alisson, really, because he was absolutely sensational in that game. Made one of the best saves you'll see all season from Dele Alli. Although Ali should probably score, it's still an incredible save. And just for the whole game was like one of the best performances we've seen from him in a Liverpool shirt, to be honest, until an unfortunate error for the Spurs' second goal. But yeah, I mean, it would have been harsh on either team had they not have got something out of the game. So a draw is probably fair in hindsight, I guess. But yeah, it was a bit of a frustrating one to watch for sure.
Yeah, I definitely get what you mean. Like, yeah, definitely exciting as a neutral, but I can see why you've got argument, obviously, from your side, and I think Spurs fans may argue as well. Like Allison, like you mentioned, very on top form. The Spurs created some good chances to potentially get other goals in there, but obviously it could have all changed on that Kane decision. I know I saw a funny comment after the game that Kane spoke to Robertson after, and he was like, "Oh, you barely even touched me. I didn't even think it was a foul." Like, I'm not sure if that's what he actually said, but that's what Kane said in his interview. I'm sure he'll say anything to get out of it. Um, what what did you make of Spurs, Sam? Would you be confident going forward to invest in any of their assets in FPL?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Um, I think Spurs were a really interesting outfit, should I say, at the weekend. Defensively, they were an absolute shambles. I wouldn't touch any of their back four. Well, I mean, Lloris made some good saves. One of the most crazy reaction saves from Alexander Arnold strike in the first half. But yeah, I mean, it was a defensive mess from Spurs. In all honesty, it wasn't much better from Liverpool. But lots of people pointing out that Van Dijk was missing and all of that. Spurs were missing any competent defenders for a long time on Sunday. Their midfield was non-existent. It looked like they were playing three central attacking midfielders in a two-man defensive midfield formation, and it looked like it. It was a good finish from Kane, but he had multiple chances, including free header in the second half in particular from at the back stick that I think he put onto the bar or just over the bar. So he wasn't exactly prolific. It was a good finish for his goal. Take nothing away from him. Son could have had three, but couldn't hit the net, couldn't hit the target. There was no Spurs player on that pitch that made me think I need that player in my team. And even like when Spurs did counter, like the supplier for their counter, like their lead orchestrator of the counters was Kane. And like we have this sort of image of Kane being on the last man and Son charging forward and like slipping a ball into him more often than not. Or at least that's how I think that Spurs would. If someone said to me, "What do you think a typical Spurs counter attack is structured by?" That's probably what I would say is likely to be the most likely outcome of an attacking return is a Son assist to a Kane goal. But that just wasn't the case, and Son was on the end of so many opportunities to score. Dele Alli, how he didn't score, I'll never know. In the first half, so yeah, no Spurs players that are going to be making their way into my team anytime soon.
I'm not going to say, yeah, I think I agree with most of that. I think outside of maybe Son, I wouldn't have any confidence in any of their assets in terms of FPL at the minute. Like you mentioned on Kane, just he's had a dreadful season so far, and their defence hasn't. Like he might go for a wing back at some point if they've got a double game week, but they need to show something else really in defence that can actually keep a clean sheet to get you some confidence there. But yeah, it's one to look forward to keep an eye on though, because there's a potential because they've had so many games postponed that they're going to have good double game weeks to come. So we need to keep an eye on them still and not just rule them out, especially if they've got the easier fixtures. We know like the Son or Kane can run riot from what we've seen in previous seasons. So not completely written them off, but they do need to show us, especially defensively, something a bit different. Another quick question for you then, Sam. Who's the best right back at the minute, Trent or Cancelo?
Well, I'm pleased you gave me those two options. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I take a lot of stick from a couple of members of the Discord for backing Trent, and they valiantly put up a fight for Reece James as well. And like going into this season, I would have said that at the start of the season, Trent offensively is just on another level, but defensively is not even in the same conversation. But I actually think Trent's defensive work has got a lot better this season. It's still not at the same level as the other two defensively, but it's definitely approaching the conversation. But offensively, you know, Alexander Arnold is just the best right back in the world, and there's no debate in my opinion. The guy is just. There was one cross in the first half the other day, and like, I remember one of the first Champions League finals I think I ever watched was Real Madrid against Bayer Leverkusen, I think it was. And I could forget what year it was, but Zidane scored an absolutely outrageous volley from the edge of the area, and it was just like a complete flick of the body, like his legs up, almost parallel with his shoulder, just full extension, and Trent's just picked out almost mirror flashback image pass off a drilled pass to him into the box. It's crazy what this guy does. He's honestly absolutely generationally good, and I am so pleased that he plays for my team. Having said that, Cancelo is an outstanding right back as well, and we're all just in an era where there's so many good fullbacks. It's crazy. When growing up, you almost saw the fullback position as the position that was just sort of plugged by anyone that was either a centre back that had a bit of pace or a midfielder that wasn't quite good enough to play on the wing, just got shoved to right back or left back. But these guys are tearing up the rule book and rewriting them in quite spectacular fashion. Having said that, I do think Cancelo plays Man City's system better than Trent would be able to play Man City's system. But in terms of what you're looking for from a fullback in this day and age, Alexander-Arnold is the best in the world.
Yeah, they definitely tailor each other to their team system. Obviously, is what you perfectly want. And I think it's that technical aspect, isn't it? That I think the passing and crossing qualities that they've got just make them exceptional. Where would you sit on that fence, Charlie?
I think, sadly, I'll have to agree. I think, yeah, and especially since Sam clarified with that last point about Cancelo playing Man City's system better, because it's a lot more sort of inverted and underlapping runs rather than being on the outside. I think you only just need to watch Trent on a good day to see how incredible his passing is. In particular, I think it's just, I've not seen from Cancelo what I've seen from Trent in terms of that kind of crossing or passing, or just anything you kind of associate with a more attacking player than a defender, which is enough for me to put Trent ahead of Cancelo. But again, I do agree, if you're looking from a defensive aspect, then of course he falls behind the other two, but what he falls behind he more than makes up for with how good he is going forward.
Just to jump in as well, I think it's quite crazy to think that potentially Alexander-Arnold is the most influential player in that Liverpool team, when he's not either fully firing or not there. That right hand side with just Salah is wildly exposed. Not that it's particularly covered at the best of times defensively if he is there, but it's wildly exposed if he's not. It's quite incredible that the most influential player on the pitch. I'm not saying that Salah's not lethal, and he's probably the best player in the world at the moment. But in terms of actual influence on a game, to have fullbacks influencing the game the way that Alexander-Arnold and Robertson do at the moment is quite incredible, really.
Yeah, just kind of as we touched on, just unreal talents in them. We've got to enjoy them both, really. And obviously, people will always compare, but both scored screamers, so you've got to compare them at some point, haven't you? So I think, they could end up having their own goal of the season contest if they score a few more. But we're loving watching at the minute, so long may it continue. Well, obviously, United can sign a good right back as well, but we'll go wait for that one. I was saying it to someone the other day. Can you imagine Aaron Wan-Bissaka ever doing that? I was like, no.
Do you remember those days when they were trying to say Wan-Bissaka is the best right back in the league?
Yeah.
It's not even the best right back on the bench at the minute.
But I felt like there was definitely a point where he was the best defensive right back.
I can say defensively, he's never been good going forward.
But But I don't quite understand how you lose that, and it seems he has lost it. And of all things, you think that would be one of the things that stays with you, but he just does seem to, whether it's just a symptom of Man United as a whole, don't know. But he has definitely fallen off a cliff defensively, as well as like you say, I don't think he really ever had anything going forward anyway. But
But I think that's probably one of the reasons why Manchester United weren't able to get into the same bracket of conversation as the other boys, because from your fullbacks nowadays, most teams in the mid-table have got fullbacks that can defend. Let's be real. There's a lot of teams in the mid-table that have got fullbacks that can defend better than Trent can defend at the minute. But the modern game is so tailored to having fullbacks that can do more than defend. So yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, it's like you said, we're lucky to be able to sit and enjoy and watch them week in, week out doing this stuff.
Yeah, I think, yeah, obviously we won't stay on Wan-Bissaka, but I think obviously having not the best centre backs alongside him obviously doesn't help you at the same time. You probably could have, like, if Varane was fit for longer of the season, he might have had a better chance, but Dalot seems to be very much in favour, and he's kind of more of an all-rounder. He's probably not the perfect option, but we'll see how it goes. I'm sure Wan-Bissaka will get a chance again at some point. So just before we conclude the first half of the pod, I was just going to touch on, so we've had a lot of, we're going to say suspended, should I say, postponed fixtures, as we've touched on the last few weeks. So it means potentially in the next maybe 4 to 5 weeks, the chance of double game weeks to come that we need to be watching out for. So speculation currently is that we could get potential game weeks, the main one being in game week 22, and there's potential for in game week 21 as well that we'll also get a double game week. That is around, I think it's January time, early January, and one of the things that's kind of confirmed that is that FA Cup replays, I think for round 3 and round 4, are being scrapped, so it makes sure there's always going to be a clear midweek. So currently there's high likelihood in game week 22, using the example of these 7 teams, it obviously depends a lot on COVID outbreaks, etc. If anything gets worse from how it is, or if we have a full shutdown of the league. But currently in game week 22, Man United, Spurs, Burnley, Brighton, Leicester, Brentford and Watford are highly likely to get at least one double game week between game week 21 and 22. Or it's likely to be game week 22. So it kind of leaves us only like three or four transfers worth to make any moves towards those assets. So it kind of gives us another discussion around strategy that we'll be having to come to in a few weeks. So just a quick question to you both before we move on from this. We'll probably touch on it a bit in the second half as well in terms of transfers. But so, Sam, if obviously there's a lot of uncertainty and we're not going to be making early transfers, but if there's potential for double game weeks in 21 and 22, would you be tailoring your transfers to get those double game weekers in, or would you be sticking with like your Liverpools who have just got one game?
Well, I mean, I think it would depend predominantly on which teams have 2 fixtures. But yeah, it's hard to go against some of the players that are in at the moment that are doing well, especially the Liverpool boys. Might be outscoring teams that have 2 games in them anyway. So I have to wait and see who's got games in and around there.
I'm just going to give a side note to that as well. So, for example, Chelsea, in those 2 weeks, Chelsea play Liverpool and Man City. So it's quite an easy idea. Obviously, Chelsea could still do well in both of those games, but if you've got a lot of Chelsea assets, having a look to potentially get them out in a few weeks' time, you also need to bear in mind with Chelsea that they've got, supposedly, as long as it goes ahead, they've got the Club World Cup as well, which would mean they will get some blank game weeks further down the line. So I think just looking at it from the point of view now, obviously there's a lot of things that can change, but Chelsea seems a very obvious one to potentially getting off their assets and going to double game weekers. Just looking down as well. So obviously I mentioned, so in that game week 22 it's City against Chelsea, so you could argue, do you want to be heavily relying on City in that period as well? So it's just trying to get us thinking of what potentially could be coming. Just a side note to watch out for. Obviously, a lot of confusion and thinking around at this point in time if they'll even go ahead, but just putting that in there for us to be thinking ahead. Would you be similar, Charlie? Just need to wait and see for now.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that I'm trying to play much more week to week. Anyway, I don't. I mean, obviously it's good to know roughly what's coming, but because it's also uncertain, there's an extent to which there's not that much use planning that far in advance. I also think Sam's point was a good one actually, because I was just looking. Liverpool's fixture that in game week 22 is at home to Brentford. Now I can tell you right now I'm going to have triple Liverpool in that week, even though they'll only have one game, because I can easily see them scoring or outscoring a lot of those teams that have the double in 22. potential double in 22. So I think, it's just play it by ear, really. And there's nothing to say that, who knows, by that point, maybe there'll still be COVID going around, and I'm sure there'll still be COVID going around. And some of those doubles may turn into singles or blanks, or, anything can really happen at this point. I think you just play it by ear as we move along. Once things start getting more confirmed, it's probably that's when you start moving. I'm pretty comfortable with my sort of core group of players. I've mainly targeted obviously the top three. We've talked not just FPL but just in general about how far clear those top three are in Chelsea, Liverpool, and Man City. That's kind of what the core of my team's made up already. I think the only argument is, like you say, Chelsea, because of those two rough fixtures in a row, and then potentially at blanks because of the Club World Cup. That's probably the area that I'm targeting over the next couple of weeks, just to start moving away. But yeah, no real intention from me to really go hard on those double game week fixtures, just because it's all too up in the air. Can't get my words out. Too up here in the air at the moment.
Yeah, but I think it's a funny one with strategy as well, because I was thinking it's a good opportunity to triple captain, but then you'd ideally want to be triple captain like Salah or someone as an example. So it's kind of, would that triple captain even outscore Salah in that week? It's a bit of a funny one. But it's definitely one to watch out for. I think it's a bit too early on in the season to be thinking about wildcarding into that week, and with all the uncertainty, it's just not the right thing to be doing. I think it's come a little too early for what we generally need. I feel like we generally get it around like 26, 28. We kind of get a double game week that seems to be the optimum time to play it, and like a bench boost kind of chip. So definitely something to watch out for. I think what I was seeing, we'd get confirmation of those rescheduling games around the game week 20 kind of deadline. But again, obviously COVID could take over before then, but just keep a thought for it going forward. So I think that's just done for the first part. So I'm actually going to hand over to Sam this week, who is actually going to be, or should I say, games master or quiz master for the week, giving me a week off. So over to you, Sam.
Yeah, well, we thought we'd give you a chance. I thought I'd give you a chance to get involved, since you've very majestically hosted the quiz for a number of weeks, only to see us draw every week. So we thought we'd give you a chance to.
But this could be very embarrassing now when I just have no knowledge at all, and I just get it from.
Well, maybe, but let's hope not.
Is this for Will, or is this a chance for you, Sam, to chicken out of a game between you and me? Is that what we're saying?
Well, there are elements of needing to just sort of recoup for a second half of the season onslaught that is coming. But for now, this is an opportunity for Will to have a little bit of fun.
There we go.
And hopefully he can dent Charlie's confidence ahead of next week a little bit. Right. So in similar fashion to how we've played in quizzes long ago, this week's quiz is going to be involving the two of you directly, going head to head in old school Western shootout, naming teams that have been relegated from the Premier League since its introduction in the 92 season.
Here we go.
So there are 41 teams that have been relegated from the Premier League, some multiple times, since it became the Premier League from the old First Division. And I need you to give me a correct answer to remain in the game. Now, seeing as there are 41 teams, I have a random number generator on my phone in front of me that has generated either number 1 or number 2. Charlie, if you choose the correct number, you will have the options to go first or second. There will be no ties in this quiz. It is to the death.
What if we name them all?
Well, this is why someone goes.
Ambitious.
This is why someone goes first.
Okay.
Because if the person goes first,
okay,
they get the opportunity to win. So, Charlie, would you like number 1 or number 2?
I will take number 2.
Okay, it is number 2. Would you like to go first or second?
I will go first, please.
Okay, so Charlie, when you're ready, I need the name of a team that has been relegated from the Premier League. If you get it wrong, you are instantly out, and Will wins. If you give me an incorrect answer, you are also instantly out. I do not need a correct answer from Charlie to seal the win. It's if you lose, if he dies, he dies.
Yeah,
Right.
this is going to be fun. I'm not particularly confident, but we'll see.
There's an interesting list of teams here. It's an interesting list of teams. Right, Mr. Marsh, when you are ready, fire away.
We'll kick off with Norwich.
Norwich is correct. Good
So
start.
I'll fire straight back with Fulham.
Fulham. Good shout. Good shout.
Watford.
Yes, that's also on that.
Is it bad that the first two that Charlie have said weren't even on my list? That's kind of embarrassing how my list is.
And they're both ones that are in the current league.
Yeah. Bournemouth.
Bournemouth is correct, yes.
Sheffield United.
Is correct.
So you don't steal it later on, Sheffield Wednesday.
Sheffield Wednesday. Nicely done.
Crystal Palace.
Is correct.
Newcastle.
The Geordies might be going down again this season.
Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Wolves is
That's a
correct.
good one, that.
Thank you.
I had someone and I just completely went out of my head. It was someone quite obvious. We ain't got a time limit, have we?
I'll give you some time to stall. Ask
No,
me for one.
no, that's right. You got a little bit of time.
It's just because I was thinking it was an example. Oh, that was it. West Ham.
West Ham.
Because you said Newcastle, and I was like, it's a team that's quite established now, but they got relegated at one stage.
Yeah, bubble did burst for West Ham at one point.
I will go with the similar kitted Aston Villa.
Villa is correct.
I feel like Charlie's going to get a lot further into this list than me. Middlesbrough.
That's a good one. That is correct.
Well, we talked about Newcastle. I don't think we've said Sunderland, Arsenal's opponents tonight.
It's also correct. Sunderland.
Because they're so far down, unlike some other teams. So talking of a team quite far down, I'll go for Wigan.
That is also correct.
Probably my least favourite, well, other than Tottenham, my least favourite team, Stoke City.
Stoke City is
Stoke.
correct.
Come on. Thinking of, I'm going to say Championship teams. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Stoke and Swansea are both in the Championship.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Let's stay in Wales. We'll go with Cardiff.
Get out of
Nice.
Wales. That one next.
Piggybacks. The old Welsh piggyback.
Right. QPR.
Nice.
We'll go with where Emil Smith-Rowe had his loan at Huddersfield.
Nice. Yeah, good one.
That was one of mine. That was one I was saving to the later on.
Few big clubs left on the list, boys. There's plenty to pick up.
I've still got a good couple that I can think of.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I should use this one now or not. I'll save that one. We'll go with Birmingham.
Birmingham is a good one. I seem to remember Birmingham won the League Cup, actually.
Yeah, they did.
The final. That was it.
It was one of Albafemi Martins with a winner.
Don't know. Were you at the game, Charlie?
I was going to say, wasn't that against Arsenal?
Did you go to the game?
I can't say it was there.
Big Obafemi?
We'll go with the record lowest point scorers, Derby County.
Nice.
That's so obvious. Didn't even have that one down. Right, Charlie is going to be going on for days here, and I'm going to be struggling. Just trying to stall you so I can try to think of some more to add to my list, because the list is incredibly short right now. I think I'm going to have to use my one from previously. So it's a bit of a throwback to when... I'm trying to think, when I say it's a throwback, I'm trying to make sure it's within that time period. I'm pretty confident it was. It's going back to Yorkshire with Barnsley.
Barnsley is correct.
It was quite like, I feel like it was like mid-90s, late 90s when they got relegated.
Barnsley. It's a great shout. It is a great shout. 97, 98 season, they went down.
Let's go with Harry Maguire's old stomping ground, Hull City.
Correct.
I was going Leicester then.
There's some
He said it.
big clubs left on.
Thanks for that. I can say, yeah, Leicester.
Leicester is correct.
Thanks for that one, Charlie.
No, because you thought... Okay,
I thought you were going to say Leicester and you gave me that one.
Fair enough.
Thank God for that. That's all I'm saying.
Let's go with... I remember doing an FM save with them, so I'm pretty confident in Bolton Wanderers.
Correct. There's only 17 left, so you've had a good shift so far, fellas.
I thought you were going to say 7 left. I've got
No,
1.
no. 17 left. There's plenty left.
Well, a lot of this is just purely from the number of teams that have been in the top league.
Yeah, it's just trying to think out if they got relegated as well, isn't it? Have we said that one? If I say a team again, you're going to correct me. I don't get knocked out if I say the wrong team again, do I? I mean, if Charlie's already said it or something.
You can have 1 life on repetition.
That's
so if you
that's tough.
Well, that's how we roll in these woods. Only one man comes out the woods alive.
I don't think we have said Leeds.
We have not said Leeds.
Thank God.
Good stuff.
I was trying to get. I was going through the table and I can't think of many other Premier League teams currently.
16 to go.
It seems a long way off from current, but older generations will remember Manchester City being relegated.
Nice. That's a good one.
That's the good times. I was nearly thrown off there by another Premier League team because it's their first. I'm pretty sure it's their first season in the Premier League ever. So I'm just brainstorming here. I'm not saying Brentford because I know it's their first season in the Premier League, so they can't have been relegated.
If you could tell us ones you think is the answer rather than ones you think isn't, that'd be great.
I was just trying to tell you my thought process, just trying to work my way through the Premier League. I'm pretty sure, yeah, you did say them. I was going to say that team, but I won't be saying them. Surely they've not been in the Premier League that long, so they've been up. They've been up and then down again. It's a difficult one. I've got a really difficult one that I don't think Charlie, well, he might know it, but I was trying to save till last, but I might have to use it. Because I'm not certain on this one. So I feel like I need to keep myself in the game. So we're going way back here. We're going to Swindon.
That's a great shout.
Because I knew that was right.
Fantastic shout.
I knew that one was right, but I didn't think Charlie would have it, but I want to keep myself in the game. So
that was what I thought was in the 3 hardest ones on the list. That's a great shout.
That's like from back in Premier League years, literally watching the United glory years.
That is from the realms of, I don't even know where you plucked that from.
That was like the third one.
93, 94 season, Swindon down.
That was like the third one on my list. I did that quite early as well. It wasn't like far down.
Nice.
My next one. Again, I'm. A lot of this is coming from not even my knowledge of the Premier League, but just my knowledge from playing Football Manager or Championship Manager over the years. And I'm fairly confident in Charlton Athletic.
Charlton is correct.
That's a good one. So the last answer I was unsure on. I'm not even going to say this because it could give away one of the answers for Charlie. So I was just having a brainstorm, going through the alphabet, and I didn't get very far. I got to B. I got to Blackpool.
You go Blackpool, yeah?
Yeah, Blackpool definitely got relegated.
They did indeed.
Good
They
old.
did indeed.
They had a good run, didn't they? To be fair, I think half of a season, and then not so good the rest of that other season.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to jump in there, and you didn't lead me onto this because I was already thinking it, but Blackburn.
Correct.
I don't think I got that far in the B's, to be
Correct.
fair.
Somehow went down with Morten Gamps Pedersen, one of the best left foots ever to grace the Premier League.
I'm getting to the point now. I'm getting these teams where I'm like questioning if they were actually in the Premier League within this period.
I can confirm they do need to have been in the Premier League at some point.
Yeah, to get relegated. I've got two names. Well, one of them, I need to know if they've been in the Premier League, and then the other one, I'm just not completely sure on. So I'm a bit stuck on these two here. They have been in there. I feel like I've seen their kit in the Premier League at some point, but it's surely. I feel like it's going way. It's not way back, but it's quite. I'm going for it. Coventry.
A great shout. It's
Wow.
fantastic shout.
Yeah, that's lucky because my MD is a Coventry fan, and it just came to my head, and I just pictured the kit in the Premier League because it's quite a unique kit,
class.
isn't it?
That is class.
Getting down to my last couple here.
You got 2, 4, 7. You got 10 remaining, guys. You got 31 so far. It's a great effort.
Decent. We've done very well. I believe not long before they had to split up and so on, that Wimbledon were relegated.
Very good.
What the show
Very
that
good.
is.
Very good.
Oh,
Very good.
Yeah, I think it was only a couple of years before they all that them and them kid on split thing happened.
I'm searching down leagues at this point. And a team has popped up into my head because the in-laws support someone in
Those
League.
in-laws.
The in-laws support a League One club, and they recently played Portsmouth.
It's another good one. Very good.
I feel like that's a bit more recent, isn't it? But it's quite a while ago.
It is.
I've got one that I'm not sure if we said because it feels like a more obvious one, but I don't remember either of us saying it. So I'm going to have to risk my one life. I don't believe either of us has said West Brom.
You have not.
Oh no!
The ultimate yo-yo has finally been identified.
I'm at this point where I'm like, have we even said some of these? I'm like questioning what I've written down. I've got two names written down here, which I'm quite confident, and then one I've got no confidence in at all. I can't even think. They're definitely not in the Championship. I'm assuming they're in. I think they're in League One now. Ipswich.
That's really good. Very good.
I keep going for the
This
alphabet.
is outstanding, boys. That's
I keep getting through the alphabet.
35 of these you've got now.
I got to I, and I'm like, is there a team that begins with I? I'm like, I don't know where I put that one from.
Very good. Oh, wow. What's he got? What have you got in the locker, Charlie?
It's getting tough.
How many more you got written down, Charlie?
I've got no certainties written down. I've got I've got 3 that I'm somewhere in the middle about. Which one do I go for? Is the question. I'm not sure if we've said Burnley.
That's correct. That is correct. Twice relegated from the Premier League.
That's one of those ones that I was unsure about relegation. Obviously, I know they're in the Premier League, but I just couldn't remember when they got relegated. Okay. Not stalling at all here. So we've said them. Okay. So I've got one that I'm confident on. But I feel like Charlie keeps going for these big teams still, and I'm like, am I missing some more obvious teams? I'm just like, I'm nearly in the conference here. It's literally how low I'm going. And I feel like Charlie's tactic is slightly different. So I've got another one coming from, I think they're in League One with Oldham.
It's pluck the three hardest ones.
Really?
That is outrageous. That is so good.
If the in-laws, like, they support Rotherham, and, like, if I didn't know who they were playing for some weeks, I wouldn't get some of these.
So good. Well, I don't know what to say. Charlie, it's back to you.
Yeah,
there are
left?
4 teams left on the list.
4 teams.
I think, Will, you've probably given me too much credit to say there's any kind of tactic here. I'm just searching the corners of my brain to try
and I actually miscounted the total number of teams in here. So there are 42 teams, so it is possible for a tie.
Oh, no.
I miscounted the top row, which is blank on Excel. So that's unfortunate.
I've just had a moment. It's just like, just won the World Cup with that thought. This has come to my head.
Well, there are 4 teams.
Fancy sharing, or
they play football. There you go.
Thank you. God. Okay. Are we allowed any suggestion of like size of clubs left?
No. Well, it's up to Charlie, but I've got one.
It's up to me. Okay, cool.
It's up to Sammy.
Then yeah.
But no, Will normally does like a little clue teetering around the edges somewhere. There is an absolute giant of footballing history on this list. That is the only.
That is such a clue. That is outrageous clue.
That's all right. Well, if he gets that one this time round,
yeah,
then we'll review the clue basis for the next one.
I am struggling here though. I am pretty certain. I don't even really remember them being in the league, but I remember, I think, from cup games they've played against league sides, people talking about it. So, and I've not really got any other answer here, so I'm going to go for Bradford.
Very good.
No way. That's literally the one I had.
Was it?
Very good.
They had a decent cup run. I seem to remember a while ago, and I feel like it was talked about then. I have no memory of them in the league, but I seem to remember them being talked about as a team that were in the league.
I'd gone back around the alphabet and I had loads of B's, and I'm like, there's so many B's here. Is there any more? And Bradford came to mind. And so you've not utilised the unbelievable clue that Sam just gave you. Because I think that just gave it gave me a team, and I'm willing to take the risk on my one life in the fact that we might have said it.
You only get a life for repetition.
Yeah, but I know this team is correct, but I'm not confident someone said it before. So Forest, Nottingham Forest.
That is correct. Yes.
Nottingham Forest. When he said a massive club, I'm like, because they've won the obviously European Cup, etc.
Well, boys, you've got 40 out of 42 of the teams.
God.
This is quite incredible.
So does this mean Charlie doesn't get a clue now?
No, there's no more clues. You've had your clues.
Where's my clue? Oh wait, you did.
Well, if Charlie gets one wrong, if he'd have got Forest, I'd have given you a clue as well.
Yeah, fair play, Charlie. Good luck.
But Charlie, this is to remain in the game.
I'm out of my ones that I've written down. So we're gonna have to take a bit of a punt, I think. I don't know if we've said. I'm almost certain because we had like a family friend from a long time ago that supports this team.
Oh, in-laws, family, friends, they're all
It
coming
really
out
does
now,
help.
aren't
It
they?
does help, doesn't it?
They're all coming out now.
Because it's not my part of the world at all, but we do have a family friend from this place, and I'm sure they're in the league, but I don't know if it's been said or not. Reading.
It's so good.
Yeah.
21 out of 21 possible answers.
I'm going to call that family friend
my
after this.
God.
Thank them.
Oh no!
That's so good.
Oh no way!
Oh mate.
Over to you, Wilbur.
Absolutely in the mud here. So I've got two names written down, but I don't think either of them are right.
Well, one of them's definitely wrong.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Well, I can talk about my ideas here, can't I? Because even in my game, yeah. So I'm convinced this is completely wrong, and it's never going to be right because we've said Forest, and I don't think Notts County have ever been in the Premier League. Because that's got to be. I don't feel like they can have ever been that high. So I've kind of ruled that one out. But I'll be annoyed if that is somehow the answer. And then this would be hilarious if it was right, because I'm pretty sure this is where Charlie's based.
Because Will once had a hamster from here.
But I don't think we've said Brighton, and I'm just trying to log if they've ever been relegated. Are you allowed to confirm if we've said Brighton?
Can I confirm if you've said Brighton?
If anyone said Brighton before?
Well,
in fairness, I've got no other answer, so I'm just going to say Brighton.
You going for Brighton?
Yeah.
That's incorrect, mate.
Never been in the league before since they came up.
Yeah, I don't think they had, but that was why I never said it earlier.
Geographically, you are so close as well.
I don't think that would really help me, to be fair. We're not that good on that geography down there.
This team are currently in the Premier League.
Currently in the Premier League?
Yeah.
Southampton?
Yes.
What? How have we not said Southampton?
I thought we'd said
Southampton.
Damn it.
Wow.
Well,
what a one to end on as well. With some of the ones we gave.
That was
lost to Southampton.
Unbelievable effort there, chaps. That was class.
Just lost 9-0
all but
Southampton.
One.
Class. Well, I mean, that's the highest quality quiz fan in a long time, so fair play to the both of you.
Wow.
Fair play to the both of you.
Well done, Charlie. Well,
yeah, well, that was your chance to, it's your chance to sort of put him down a bit. Give me a chance.
In fairness,
now he's going to be on an even bigger high next week.
In fairness, Will definitely got the more niche answers there. I definitely went a bit more safe with mine.
Yeah, I was down in. It's only 8. I should have kept some League One answers to the end. But that's what I had to do. I needed some brain power in the middle, so I had to use Swindon quite early, which I knew was right.
I mean, considering you were in trouble when we used Swindon at pick number 12 or whatever, to still find another 10 answers is quite incredible. So
it's literally when I was rooting around the lower leagues. To be fair, as soon as I was it clicked League One, and I just got a few in from there. But
fair play.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Well done to the both of you.
Good account at least, even if we did lose. Can't believe we lost on Southampton. Thank you for that, Sam. I appreciate that.
No, not at all.
But yeah, that was good. Thank you for that. So we're going to move on and do a bit of a preview as much as we can of the game week coming up. Shout out to Hills in the chat as well, who we didn't get a chance to say evening to, as we was immersed in the chat of working that. So if we move on to the proposed actual fixtures that we're expected to have in game week 19, we love Boxing Day football. Well, I do personally, and I'm sure we all enjoy a good Boxing Day football. So we currently have 9 games to be played on Boxing Day, with the only one fixture on the Monday the 27th, which is United against Newcastle. So looking forward to this week, guys. I think one of the standout fixtures, in my opinion, is the Liverpool-Leeds fixture, which I think, again, confirms... I think we'll address the captaincy straight away before we even dive into all the fixtures. Are we going anywhere outside of Salah?
No chance.
Same.
Well, I mean, no, but there is to be said that we've said before on the pod, when Liverpool at home, the goals do get spread around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone is really, really struggling in their league and looking for a differential, then for sure Jota is a great shout for a differential captain this week. But in terms of ownership, there's no point in looking myself anywhere other than Salah. You could even put a shout for Mane, or even if you fancy the shout for Trent. Yeah, I would. I will be going, but there's definitely some differential options. But to look at any other team in the league, really, captaincy pick is probably unlikely.
Yeah, so definitely that fixture then. Definitely targeting that fixture, whatever asset you want to. Yeah, I feel like they'll be spread around enough that there's not going to be a huge amount of difference between those assets, is there? So it's not a bad shout. And I think we've seen it in previous weeks, like when Salah maybe gets 1 goal or like 1 assist, Trent has actually outscored him like a clean sheet and a goal, for example. So you can still get gains staying in the same game. I feel like I'm going to be saying this for the next 5 or 6 weeks now. So if I'm trying to catch you both, you don't think I should go Ronaldo then? That's the next one. You could argue it's one of the easier fixtures, but there's a bit of, it's just the uncertainty on COVID, I think, that's putting me off that, and I don't think I'll go away from Salah. I'm guessing.
I definitely think that Newcastle and Leeds are the whipping boys at the moment.
Yeah.
So I think they are ones to target. I would just still be too uncertain about United, particularly the fact that the game isn't until the Monday as well, so it's the day after all the other games for no obvious reason.
You won't have the news, yeah.
Yeah, so that just to make it a little bit more tough to put your captain there, whereas you can almost be certain you could probably even expect to see some leaks of the Liverpool team before the deadline.
So you're using that logic. So if the Liverpool and the United game were the opposite way round, what would you say then?
I would still captain Salah because everyone else will.
I'd say there's a greater shout for captaining Ronaldo if they were the other way around, but the shout is probably still to captain Salah.
Agreed.
Yeah, can't disagree with that. We talked about the Arsenal fixture, Charlie. So not tempted by an Arsenal asset.
I think at this point Arsenal assets are still low owned enough that just having them is fine, and that's my approach to it. I certainly wouldn't want to go as far as captaining any of them. I think Norwich aren't great, but they've been better. They've seemed to have got a defensive first approach at the moment, beyond anything else. So I would probably expect maybe like a 2 or 3-0, but again, similarly, I wouldn't expect any one player in the Arsenal team necessarily to get all the points there. So there wouldn't be one that would be comfortable enough captaining. But I would definitely be happy keeping Martinelli in my team for that game. I expect him to do well, but not enough to go outside of Salah.
Yeah, you're definitely not transferring out an Arsenal player when they've got Norwich. I think that's a rule for any player who's playing Norwich. And well, I think they played Villa, didn't they, in the last game because the previous game week got postponed, and they looked pretty terrible in that. But I know they were kind of plagued by a few COVID cases at that point as well. And I think then United actually played them before that, and they could have easily scored a goal or two. But that's mainly because United are so poor. But that's a different topic. So is there any other like standout assets or fixtures that you're seeing in those set of fixtures, guys? If I went to you, Sam, is there anyone else that stands out as an option or a game to be targeting outside those ones we've touched on so far?
So purely because I think a few weeks ago called that they looked like they were about to go on a run where they win just 15 games in a row or something like that. City are obviously in great form, and they're home to Leicester, and I think that the sort of profitability of that fixture, if you like, will depend largely on the team that Leicester put out in the cup against Liverpool tomorrow.
Yeah.
So if Leicester go full strength in the cup and try and win that game, then there might be some kind of repercussions that they're not all ready for the weekend or something along those lines. So I definitely think there's potential for some City assets to become or to remain, should we say, as prolific as they have been over the last few weeks in that game, based on what happens with Leicester tomorrow. I think there could be just quite a few quite juicy games, really. I think Chelsea might struggle at Villa, just because Villa have just looked really organised since Gerrard went in, and just have a clear methodology of how they're trying to play. But there's just a few like tasty scraps in and around those fixtures, like Brighton against Brentford should be quite a good game. West Ham, Southampton could be quite a good game. Spurs, Palace, a lot of those kind of mid-table clashes that often throw up some really good games, but have the potential to throw up 0-0s as well. So maybe not the dream for FPL. If the West Ham Southampton game does go ahead, then I like that as a fixture to target some West Ham assets. But yeah.
We should get a good gauge on that as well, because West Ham are playing in the cup tomorrow as well. So
yeah.
I'm pretty sure, because they were meant to be playing Norwich, it was Norwich that had the COVID cases. So it's quite likely that West Ham game will go ahead, but we get that indication tomorrow anyway. And we know that Spurs' case have cleared up. And I don't remember Southampton having any confirmed cases, so I'd be quite confident that I'd go ahead. But then you mentioned City, Sam, but who the hell would you be going for if you was going for an attacking asset?
Well, it depends who. Well, if you go for an attacking asset, I don't know. I was sat there looking the other day, and I actually think Gabby Hayes, any of them, pretty good shout. But other than that, in terms of attacking assets, we sat quite ironic. The last pod we did, we sat there and said, "Our laughed," because rightly so. And then he's had a cracking couple of weeks. You just don't know, do you? And it's very much a case of right place, right time, educated risk taking. One thing to bear in mind, Grealish and Foden have both been seen out on the town by Guardiola, so it's that didn't go down too well. I doubt they'll both be in the 11, if either of them are in the starting 11 at all. De Bruyne is coming back into a rich form, and Guardiola came out in the week and said, we need De Bruyne on form. So he's obviously held highly in regard. But yeah, I mean, trying to predict a Man City attacking lottery number of times. All I know is I need to get rid of Kyle Walker.
We can agree on that one at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. It's like it's high risk, high reward, isn't it? Because if you do get the right asset, then like if you picked Mahrez for the last week, then you've got a good chance of getting a return. But it's just pet roulette at its finest, isn't it? You need like an injury or two to kind of give him a confirmed lineup that who's going to play.
If I was gonna pick a Man City attacking asset for that game, I'd pick Gabriel Jesus. I think he's been in great form. This season, obviously, without Aguero, he's kind of had to take a little bit more of the responsibility. But I also think that he's shown Guardiola that he can trust him, and as a result, he'll probably end up picking him more regularly. He's shown the flexibility that he can move out into the wide positions as well. So yeah, if I was going to go for one, it'd probably be Jesus, just because Sterling and De Bruyne are a bit out of price bracket, that comfortable sort of value midfield option.
Yeah.
You're sort of looking at premium prices for the both of them, and I just think there's better options at this point in time, and there's not really too much value in me taking Foden because Charlie's got him. So
yeah, so you've got Bernardo, haven't you, at the minute? So
I have, yeah, but he'll probably be questioned. If he doesn't return this week, he'll be on the block. I won't be taking him out this week. But yeah, we'll see. We've got bigger problems than Bernardo not returning.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. So I wanted to compare us two with Bernardo and then Charlie with Foden. Obviously, you've mentioned the incident with Foden, but going to you, Charlie, I'm sure you'll be pretty confident holding him still, but obviously keeping an eye out for what's going on with that.
Yeah, exactly. You basically explain my position. Yeah, I think and I was listening to another podcast where they said something similar actually, where it's probably actually a good thing that there's a non-playing reason for why, or a non-football reason why he didn't play Foden, because that still gives me the confidence that I think in Pep Guardiola's first choice 11, I think Foden starts. And so hopefully we'll get some indication midweek or before the games at the weekend. Whether that's been cleared up, I would expect it to be addressed. I would expect, just because the press love this sort of thing, that they'll ask about it. So should hopefully get some kind of indication. Because I think statistically he seems to do the best. I think the fact that De Bruyne has come back in and is doing what he does very well, I think that does impact on Bernardo and Gundogan, who were the other kind of options that I was considering instead of Foden. So yeah, I think as long as there's nothing too crazy about what Guardiola says following Foden's night out, then I'm happy to hold for a long time as well. I think their fixtures are still good for quite a while, even till the end of the season. To be honest, you could argue, and that's the other thing as well. I've tried to, I think, a little bit pay a bit less attention to fixtures specifically regarding those top three teams. I think Chelsea maybe applies a bit more to, particularly with the potential for them to have two tough games and blanks, that it makes a bit of a difference for them. But there's not really a game that any of those top three go into other than against each other potentially, where you may start struggling with some of those assets. So they're kind of long terms, really, for me. But yeah, I'm happy holding Foden as long as there's no extra reasons why he won't stay in the side.
Yeah, I think it's similar like what Sam said with Bernardo as well. I mean, it's probably bigger fires, or you may as well just keep him there, because if he starts, he's got a great chance of returning because he's in that team. And then if he doesn't start, you just hope he doesn't come off the bench. But it's kind of, you want to be involved with the City assets, but you don't want to be paying that ridiculous price and they don't start. So I think with Foden and Bernardo, you've got that kind of balance that they're not too expensive, but you can get some returns possibly, as we've seen from both of the assets over the last few weeks or so. I actually just wanted to skip back to Liverpool, because obviously we just talked about Liverpool assets, and obviously Robertson is out for 2 Premier League games in a League Cup game. So what would you think of Tsimikas, Sam, for a few weeks?
Yeah, he's not bad. If you've got the capability to get him in, then yeah, he's going to play. So he'll definitely play the Premier League games. Wouldn't surprise me if Milner played at left back tomorrow in the Cup. Yeah, Tsimikas will definitely play both Premier League games at left back. So, but then again, it's the same.
Go on.
It's the same adage of what do you do when Robertson comes back and comes straight back in. The last time Robertson came back in, Tsimikas was on such a hot streak of form that I thought it was like not possible for them to be at least in rotation. But Robertson just came back in and played 90 minutes straight up. Like it wasn't even up for debate. So just kind of shows how set that Robertson pick is in Klopp's mind, and as a result, how short-term plugging a gap Tsimikas as a pick is.
And say it's mainly due to the fact he's now the cheapest player on the game at 3.7 million, which is
Tsimikas.
Yeah, he's fallen ridiculously in price. So that's just kind of obviously saving a lot of your budget. Obviously, the main issue I have with that is obviously it's blocking the third Liverpool slot.
But I mean, certainly against Leeds and potentially without Van Dijk, there's definitely in my opinion, there's a greater chance that Liverpool midfield and attacking assets return than there is that you get a clean sheet from Tsimikas.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more.
Who knows what's going to happen? But at 3.7, it's pretty. You can't really turn your nose up at that one.
It's literally 2 games. I know he's going to play, and then he's just going to rot on the bench until the next wild card. But then it's the issue, especially if AFCON is cancelled, that you really want Jota, Salah, and Trent in there. If we get some confirmation on AFCON actually going ahead, which probably we won't get, and probably will get cancelled in the end.
I can't see, just touching on that quickly, I can't see how that goes ahead.
Yeah, I can't see it
now
either.
in the current climate. and they've already talked. There's a lot of early
Rumours.
discussions about it in the group the other day, but it was further talk today about how they're looking at compensation packages for Cameroon. So I would be surprised now from a position of hoping it was going to be cancelled from a selfish point of view, from being able to keep Salah, Mane, Matip, and Keita. Are now in a position where I'd actually be ahead.
Yeah, I think I would say it's probably 75% likely to be cancelled, if not more than that at this point. You've got to think we've surely probably go into some kind of restrict. Well, I've seen countries already restricting travel, so it's not looking good unless it improves in the next month or so. We shall see. So if we just touch on how we're looking in terms of our teams going forward. So, Charlie, is your team looking in good shape going into the next game week? Are you thinking of any moves? Obviously, I'm not expecting you to make a move until like a minute before the deadline, but any moves drying up, or is it going to be a roll for you?
The hope is just to roll. It will likely come down to any Foden youth. Ultimately, I think long term, my aims are to get Alonso out, probably switching more to a 3 at the back and play 3-5-2. And then also, I've currently got 2.2 million in the bank, which is likely going to be used to upgrade my bench striker, 4.4 striker. The problem is, I was looking earlier, that's either going to be, or the most likely candidate is going to be one of King or Dennis. And the problem is they've got Wolves, and then they've got West Ham, which I'm not particularly keen necessarily on bringing them in for. Maybe the West Ham game, but certainly not this time. So it's not a move I need to make yet, so I'm happy just holding. But I think just having effectively 15 players that I would consider playing in a fixture, if it's good enough, I think is going to be useful, particularly during this period. So yeah, those are kind of my long-term aims. I think for now, I'm just kind of want to roll and ideally have 2 free transfers for when I need them. And I think that's a pretty sensible way to play at the moment with everything going on.
Yeah, I think that's high up on my recommendations. Of obviously, if you've got no fires to put out, try to roll the transfer where you can this week, just so you've got that flexibility depending on what happens in the coming weeks, especially late postponements. We've seen that various times already. I'm just going to ask you a follow-up question there, Charlie. Is there any particular teams or like runner fixtures or certain players that you've got an eye on for the next, like a transfer within the next few weeks to potentially utilise a good run coming up?
Sort of yes and no. I mean, I think in terms of teams with good runs, there's the likes of Everton, United, Spurs, West Ham too. But I don't really know how much I want players from those teams. Everton haven't been playing particularly well. I guess you could argue Calvert-Lewin's on his way back and there's potential for him, but I certainly would want to give him at least a few games starting already just to see how he is. He's been out for a long time. Maybe Damari Gray, you could go that route, but again, just doesn't fill me with confidence going that way. United, similar thing, not really sure. And really the only assets I would want are the most expensive ones, so that kind of puts that to the back of my mind. And again, unless they make it clear that it looks like something good's going to happen from them. It sounds like I'm just repeating myself, but West Ham, very similar. They've not really lived up to what we're hoping for, particularly Antonio, who hasn't. He had that one assist to Masuaku's cross/goal, but other than that, hasn't done anything for a very long time. And I'm only really holding him just because of no real alternative. And then Spurs, I'd maybe say Son. No one else really from their team, but again, none of these are particularly feeling like positive moves for me. And ultimately, I'm just moving more and more towards the idea that I just want to have as many players as I can from the top 3 teams, and then any kind of interesting enough players around the outside of that. So like the likes of Martinelli or some of those extra players around the outside. So Yeah, the fixtures aren't even the upcoming fixtures where there are good runs. I'm not necessarily targeting them. I think it's more I'm happy just to wait and see if those teams start to perform well enough for me to then consider bringing them in for the players that I've already got that are doing well. But yeah, I think we've mentioned a few times now, the Chelsea run and potential blanks is what's kind of that then maybe the main area that I'd move on. So it's possible, if that all gets confirmed, that Mount will move on for Son at some point because I've got the funds to do that. And as I said earlier, downgrading Alonso so that I can move back to a back three. But other than that, yeah, I'm pretty happy with my team. I don't feel a need to jump on those because I don't feel like they're at all guaranteed to pay off.
Yeah, I think I sit thinking similar. Obviously, we've talked about my targeting the Man United run, obviously, from a wild card. I've got Demarai Gray lingering on the bench if required for the Everton run as well. So I'm going to keep an eye out for that one. I think in terms of my plans, I think in the perfect scenario, I would be changing Mount to Jota because I've not got Jota. But I'm 0.2 million short, which is highly annoying. And because I would have dealt with getting Jota in and then getting rid of that Chelsea asset at the same time. So I think quite likely I will roll at the minute because I think it's kind of similar to your thinking, Charlie. Everyone except for Lacadia, for me currently, is a decent option going forward. Obviously, just depending on the fixtures, depending on who you'll play. So I'm quite looking at my team now. I've currently got Demarai Gray and Matty Cash on the bench, which I think are two decent options and at a decent price. So hopefully we're looking pretty strong going forward. I might potentially look at getting the Cardia up at one point, but the fact that I've got Ronaldo is kind of restricting me from that at the minute. And it's not a burning desire to get the Cardia up there. So I think I'm happy with the kind of 14 playing players at the minute. When I needed Lacadia in that week, when I had 7 players, he decided not to be in the squad, so he's lost my trust. I think he literally he's had 1 point the whole season, but we can dream. So, similar question to you, Sam. How are you looking for the next game week? Have you got any potential fires you need to deal with? Maybe Kyle Walker.
Unfortunately, there is an inferno at the Penguin Patrol team. There's no fire. It's a disaster at the minute. So we're looking to make a couple of differential plays this week. So there's 2 possible strategies. One, I have 2 transfers. I'm going to use them. It's going to be a case of, I did pretty emphatically earlier decline any Spurs players inside, but the thought of Son, if he is available and playing, is obviously a thought. But he doesn't feature in either of these plans. So the first and most likely plan, Kyle Walker out and bring in a cheap defender to, like Charlie said, move towards this 3 at the back concept. But also someone who might play, and that's Dalot at United. Just having him there, 5 option, and that would also see Rafinha drop out. And Conor Gallagher come in for Palace. And then the other option would be Rafinha stays, Dalot comes in, and Davis gets jacked up to a Dennis or someone for Watford. So kind of similar to what Charlie was talking about. But I would like to try and find a way to get definitely be coming in. Fortunately, it's just been bigger fires to put out rather than trying to work on bringing what in. So always got to go 2 steps back to go 3 steps forward here, I think. So, that's the plan for this week.
So if you go with the Walker, Dalot, and then Rafinha, Gallagher, they're both taking funds out, really, aren't they? Are those funds going somewhere else afterwards? Would it be? Well,
they will do it. They will do it in the next week. Yeah, they'll go to the striker the week after. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. It's kind of strengthening the squad, isn't it? Really, and I've got. Dallas.
I think just it's made me realise how critical it is to have one player on your bench that's playing.
Yeah.
Even if they're just getting 2, it's better than nothing.
Yeah. So you got the slight risk with Dalot, but if he's your 5th defender, it's not.
I think Dalot. So Dalot's played 90 minutes, 3 games in a row now. The Arsenal win Palace and Norwich,
Yeah,
right?
he's
And
definitely.
two of those,
Cool. Carry on.
two of those games he's got clean sheets, and has been involved in some decent attacking plays. So it's strange, isn't it, how when new managers come in, you get that opportunity that some people might not have had under previous managers to get a right game to. So
Yeah, I'm just going to say, obviously, it's very much in favour now, but obviously we've talked about Wan-Bissaka earlier, that there's always potential that he will come in, and when you've got the games close together as well, there's quite likelihood that they can still rotate at those fullback positions, especially when you get to these like double game weeks down the line. If you've got some like 2 games in 4 days or something, it's not out of the possibilities that Wan-Bissaka will be playing as well. But it's just like I said, if he's your 4th, 5th defender, it's not as big an issue, but it gets you that value back as well.
Livramento will stay knocking around.
He's always lurking around someone's team.
Yeah.
And just similar question. Well, you kind of told us about your transfers then, so I'm assuming those transfers are targeting. I think Palace have got a decent run, haven't they? And obviously we've talked about United have a decent run.
Yeah, Palace have got a decent run. I know they got Spurs at the weekend, but like I said, Spurs defensively did not give me any kind of reassurances at all that they were capable of keeping clean sheets. So yeah, I think Palace have Spurs away, then they go Norwich, then Liverpool, but then it's Norwich again, Brentford, Chelsea, Burnley, Wolves. So Palace have got a decent run of games, and Gallagher's just been brilliant for the season. So
yeah, I think literally I was always planning to have Gallagher on the wild card, and then literally I think 3 or 4 weeks before he was just not on form, and then the week of my wild card was when he got those 2 goals. I'm like,
I'm not sure if the Club World Cup will go ahead, but if it does go ahead, then I need to start factoring in the movement away from Chelsea players as well.
Yeah, because
or just from being maybe not from all of them, but just from being so dependent on them.
Yeah, I think it's obviously we talked about it as well, that in game week 21 and 22 they play Liverpool and Man City as well, so it's not the worst thing to be getting away from in preparation for those fixtures at the same time. And currently they were blank in game week 24 and 25, but then when they come back from that, they've got a pretty solid run for majority of the rest of the season, so it'll be fun around that time, because that should be double game week season again, as we always love to see. So that kind of covers all our teams, guys. Was there anything we wanted to mention about any of the fixtures to come up, or anything, any advice in general we want to be giving before we sign off for this week?
Just in terms of advice, yeah, don't panic. I think if you can be there or thereabouts, I mean, our league really, really condensed. Now Charlie's stretched at the top, but in that sort of midfield bunch that the rest of us are in now, there's not too many points between it. It only takes one to turn it around. And fantasy football is a marathon, not a sprint. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities to sort your leagues out, even if you hadn't had the best couple of weeks.
I think building on that, as we kind of touched on with Charlie, like when you have a 50-50 decision, it's not always going to go right. You can fall on a great streak like Charlie's got at the minute. Like, for example, if I had bought Martinelli, I could arguably be upon your level, Sam, like it's that close in terms of where we are. So you just give yourself, sometimes it's not always going to go right, so it can be 50-50 and it doesn't always go correct, but just keep believing in what you're doing, and just keep what Sam said, don't panic, especially in this period. It's a bit mayhem, unprecedented, and it's difficult to plan in these situations, but try and plan, and then when it comes to postponements, then we'll just have to be quick thinking, and sometimes even more quick thinking, and hit the free hit button just before the deadline. But hey, were you going to say anything as well, Charlie, or was it nothing?
I was just going to say basically what we've said through the pod, really. Just keep an open mind. There's lots of stuff going on, so it's best to leave decisions to the end. And touching on what you guys said, I remember the first season I played FPL seriously. I was second in my league, and about 100 points off the guy in first, and that was just I think about December, and I ended up winning that league. So there's no there's a lot to go with the rest of the season, and particularly with things like chips that can be used down the line and double game weeks and blank game weeks and so on. There's a lot that can still happen. So yeah, just keep at it, really.
Yeah, definitely a lot of weeks to go. I feel like when you get into like the last 10 game weeks or something, then maybe concentrate more on your rank, but just keep making the right moves. And if you make the right moves, obviously the rank will reflect that, and obviously your league performance as well. So just consolidating what we basically said kind of throughout. I think a strong bench, as Sam kind of talked on about in trying to improve his bench, is pretty key through this minefield that we're getting at the minute. And then the key thing, obviously, I learned as well. Well, obviously, that Villa postponement was very abnormal, getting cancelled so close to the deadline. I think I made transfers probably like half an hour before that game got cancelled, but just try and keep your transfers as late as possible because they are quite valuable, and you don't want to be transferring in someone and then the game gets cancelled. And I think a key bit we kind of touched on as well with regards to the fixtures this week. So we mentioned about captaining like a Liverpool player we preferred. Obviously the fixture helps, but because they're playing the first game, we've got more confidence in that fixture going ahead. So sometimes factor that in your thinking as well. Even if you want to go for like Salah playing a day later, make sure you kind of always vice captain a player playing in quite an early game, so you can see that. Well, obviously the closer you are to the game, it's more likely to go ahead. So we've seen anything can happen in these situations. So it might not always work, but you just got to use some logic behind it. But I think that rounds us up, guys. I think we're both good. You've covered what you need to. Anything else?
All good.
No, all good.
Good stuff. That's great. So that'll be our last pod before Christmas. So from the three of us, wishing everyone a great Christmas, and we will see you probably between Christmas and New Year. So have a great rest of your evening and see you next time.